Good evening and welcome to Bronx Talk. After 25 years of construction, the 7-mile Cross Bronx Expressway was completed in 1972, cutting a concrete highway right through our borough from the Bruckner Interchange in Throgs Neck all the way to the George Washington Bridge. You know it well. As you well know, it is jammed day and night with polluting trucks and cars that have been destroying Bronx lungs for generations, not to mention its role in dividing Bronx communities. But Bronxites have simply had enough. That's it. And there's a movement now to reimagine this architectural disaster, and that effort recently got good news when a proposed traffic diversion structure that was called a community connector was rejected by the state after significant community opposition. So tonight we welcome advocates who want to reimagine this Bronx albatross in ways that help, not hurt, Bronx communities. So let's show some Bronx respect and love for the founder of Loving the Bronx. She does. She's the board chair also of the Bronx River Alliance. And my buddy Nilka Martell, nice to have you with us.
Thank you, Gary.
And the deputy director of the Bronx River Alliance, also passionate about this, Daniel Ranells. Nice to see you, Daniel. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
Nilka, let's start with you. I was thinking about this as a lifelong Bronxite. I never drive on the Cross Bronx Expressway. You got to be out of your mind, right? And I was thinking, how many Bronxites say, no, I'll go around it, or I'll go Westchester Avenue, I'll find another way to do it. There's 100 things you could do to avoid the Cross Bronx. But where I'm going with that means that all those trucks and cars come from somewhere else. And it's not like this is a roadway for us. It's a roadway for somebody else that affects us. So let's just do a little bit of the history. How did we get here? I guess Robert Moses gets credit for putting it together?
Robert Moses pretty much gets credit for all of the highway infrastructure in New York City. But the Cross Bronx Expressway in particular, divided communities, as you mentioned, sliced the north portion of Concrete Plant Park, and historically has negatively impacted the communities that live in its corridor, particularly in the South Bronx, where we see the highest asthma rates. And, for me, I've lived across the street from the Cross Bronx for 50 years now, and, impacting my own family with my son developing asthma when he was really young. So it's a story, if you speak to people in the South Bronx or that live around this corridor, their stories are going to be the same about air pollution, noise pollution, and how the highway just separates neighborhoods.
Yeah, if you wanted to go to the other side, you can't exactly hop over. You got to get to wherever one of the bridges are. I just pulled some numbers out, okay? So let's see, the plan was to cost $800 million, which is equivalent to $14 billion in this day and age. It crosses 113 streets, 7 expressways and parkways, some of which were under construction at the time. Subway and train lines are involved, also pass through hundreds of utility, water, and sewer lines, none of which could be interrupted, of course, and bridges and tunnels. It's been a disaster. Daniel, it's interesting to me that you're with the Bronx River Alliance. Why is the Bronx River Alliance so connected to this project, and one of the many partners who are saying what I said in the beginning, enough, we got to do something?
Yeah, well, we are a public-private partnership with the New York City Parks Department, and this 5 Bridges project used to be the 6 Bridges project, but they had to do
this
one
was
early.
The one that Governor Hochul recently proposed. No.
Well, the 5 Bridges project is the one that's between Boston Road and Rosedale Avenue.
Okay.
And require, it's falling down a little bit, and they need to plan for a repair because of all the trucks and traffic that's gone
that's
over
what we're
it.
talking about.
That's what
Okay.
I was talking about.
Okay.
Why we care about it is because it crosses the Bronx River in this area, and as they did repairs on a smaller section, they were dumping debris in the river. There's park access that's impeded, and so it caught the attention of our communities and our advocates. And so we have to raise up folks' voices to
Like,
talk about
like
it.
many communities, I know certainly in Van Cortlandt Park with the Major Deegan Expressway and the Henry Hudson, just the nature of having the cars and the runoff, aside from
Yeah.
any of the dumping or specifics, just having that nature of that stuff pollutes the water, pollutes the park. Has impact.
Yeah.
So we'll start with you then. What do you plan to do? What would you in general like to see to correct this situation? And then you'll get to weigh in on this, of course.
To correct the Cross Bronx.
Yes.
We've heard from community to not expand it at all, keep it within the same footprint. Like you were mentioning, the stormwater runoff, mitigate that to a 10-year storm level.
What does that mean?
Like when they say once in a 100-year storm, like that level of storm, we're saying once in 10 years, because that will manage the more extreme rainfall events that we're getting. And we are working with New York State DOT to work through those designs. And right now, there are no real mitigations for that stormwater.
How receptive are they?
For the stormwater,
Yes.
yeah, they're working with us.
So
yeah, and they're
you
showing
feel
us
like there's a
designs
partner
and-
there. Nilka, you've been doing this for your whole life, really, because you live right there. Let's start there. How much cooperation is there? We were just talking before the show that in the Bronx there's unanimity. Who in the Bronx would say, "Yeah, we love that roadway"? Nobody uses it. But what how do you view that? How do you view that whole specter?
It's a large process. It's not just working with state DOT, but it's working with city DOT. As you mentioned, when the Cross Bronx was first created, it runs through utilities. It runs through train stations. So it's having to work with all these different partners, right, to see changes.
Right.
What I'd like to see come to fruition is at least in my lifetime is capping those below grade portions that are opened. For me, when we kicked off this campaign back in 2016, it was really just looking at the below grade portion next to Virginia Park by the Parkchester train station. So DOT has identified 13 of these locations that exist below grade that can be capped.
We have a little map that you provided for us, so we can put that up there. What does capping mean? Because I was thinking about it, it would be great if you could kind of cover the whole thing. What does capping mean in your view that is realistic? I mean, it seems crazy. You couldn't really make a tunnel, I guess.
So capping is a type of covering, but the grade, it all depends on the grade of the highway. So the areas that can be capped are the portions of the highway that are below grade but opened on the top.
As opposed to the ones that, let's say, go under overpasses.
Then there are elevated portions, right? So those can't be capped, right? Like the portion that Danny was talking about that goes over the Bronx River between Rosedale and Boston Road. And then there are at-grade portions, particularly by Crotona Park, right?
So-
where it just seems like it's at street level.
So here's the map that you provided for us. We could define each point along the way. So there are 13 spots there. Did I count that right?
There are 13. I
13.
think some of them they looped in together. So the image is from New York State DOT's final report for the reimagine the Cross Bronx, and we're pretty excited to see that in the East Bronx, where I live, the areas that we thought that can be capped were identified.
And there's got to be. I mean, we talked about what 14 billion if we were to construct the highway. That's got to be very expensive. I mean,
It is gonna be
somebody's got to pay
expensive.
for it. Now I know Congressman Torres, of course, has been quite outspoken about it. Is there going to be money out there? How do we view that, or
So
where are we at?
we're hoping so. So yes, Congressman Richie Torres and Chuck Schumer secured the first $2 million for the feasibility study. Right now, Hochul has set aside, I believe it's about $30 million for a planning environmental linkage study, which we've been told it will be a 3-year study, really looking at the engineering around how to make this a reality, and then putting a price tag on it, right? So this is not a short-term project, right? I'm hoping to see this in my lifetime, Gary.
You know, when you said a 3-year study, I don't know if you saw, but I went,
Well,
we're sorry about that.
when you think about it, right? It took years to construct this, right? And the planning behind the actual construction. So it's going to take that much more, longer to figure out what can be done. When I look at the timeline, what I am hopeful about is that if this is a 3-year study and it starts next year, then maybe we're looking at a president election year, right? And maybe
So
administration can
2028,
change.
if there's a
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
that's another whole much more complicated.
Well,
question.
hopeful if that, if the study is done and we have a price tag and there is a change in federal administration, then we can advance it.
Daniel, I mentioned it to you before. Let's talk about what Governor Hochul proposed, and then, to your joy, everlasting joy, was dismissed. You sent us some pictures. Talk
yes.
about what that was and why you and community people didn't like it, and then how happy you are that it's going away. Go ahead.
Well, I'll stay seated, but we're very happy. And what was proposed was a multimodal community connector road after the construction was complete, 4 to 6 years. And that included using that structure as a traffic diversion structure. So they would divert half of the traffic of the Cross Bronx at any given point. It would move that traffic closer to Bronx River houses and NYCHA development.
So in other words, they would build like a little parallel roadway, and that was ultimately
Not
dismissed.
little, Gary.
They proposed options up to 90 feet wide, which is very
Wow.
similar to the size of the Cross Bronx.
I think the Cross Bronx is like 100 and something, 110 feet or something like that.
So it would be the same. It'd be recreating a
just
portion.
south of the Cross
And
Bronx.
so, according to the state's information, because of community advocacy, because of health and environmental concerns, et cetera, that's why they decided to dismiss it.
Yeah.
I'd be curious, and I think advocates in the Bronx would be curious to know, how did you win? Because so many times people say, we don't like this project, we don't like that project. You can start and maybe you can weigh in also. What made it work? Was it just so abhorrent and nobody could justify it? It was such a bad idea.
This is an area with very few residential areas around it. It's between.
Don't tell Nilka that.
well, no, but this is away from Virginia Park.
I understand.
And so the Starlight Park, which it goes over,
Right.
was bordered by the Sheridan Expressway and Bronx River Avenue, and so there's very little access here. This is now opened up, so you have a lot more people using Starlight Park, a lot
That's
more
true.
folks who are engaged, and a lot of folks who are more up to date on the history of the Cross Bronx and the impact it had. And so you'll have a slide with our coalition partners, and really it's both Bronx organizations, city organizations, and even Tri-State Transportation Campaign, multi or regional area, organizations coming together and saying this is not the right solution. Let's find another way.
Did you want to weigh in about this process?
Sure.
Or was it people shouting? Was it letters to elected officials?
I think it was, it all stems, right? Definitely people powered, but along with that, really working with elected officials and using media. I think we did a lot of press conferences, a lot of articles, a lot of news coverage to really state our case.
And I have to say, because I attended, this is where we decided to do this show, at the Bronx River Arts Center, there was a community kind of coming together to see the Cross Bronx, et cetera. We talked at length over there. Talk about what that was and why that fits into this whole notion of community advocacy around the XBX, the Cross Bronx.
Sure. So the Bronx River Arts Center hosted an exhibit called the Cross Bronx Living Legend, and it was put together by New York City Planning and Urban Omnibus, and it was a wonderful opportunity to see, how the Cross Bronx was created, the negative impact that it's had. protests back from, when Robert Moses decided to slice Crotona Park, right? There were protests then, and there were different flyers.
And the Bronx
and-
never changes, does it? We've been doing this a long time.
And one of the things that I really enjoyed was the recorded stories of folks and their experiences living or working or even worshiping near the Cross Bronx and what their experiences were. So I think it was, visual and the storytelling and, so many historical pieces that were part of this. And the programming along with it. They did walking tours, they did panel discussions, and a lot of folks from the community came out and enjoyed it.
It's what we were joking before. I was joking beforehand. Who in the Bronx would say, "Hey, we love Cross Bronx"? So people came out. There was one photo. I know we have this photo. I just loved this photo because it told such a tremendous story. This photo. Let's leave it up for a second. Okay, so here's the Cross Bronx, but there's that woman standing there, and image-wise and the implication, we're living here in the middle of all these cars, and we're trying to make a living, we're trying to raise our families, and so I just thought this photo was tremendous. And then there's another photo which I took at the event of these children's activities, so kids could also, because look, we're not going to be here when it's finally done, they should know what's going.
Absolutely.
But I thought that was really a brilliant way so congratulations to you and all of them. It's comforting to me, and it was comforting that night, that the city was there, that the city supported it. So I get the feeling there's some forward motion here. There is?
There is.
There is. That's fair enough. Let's just talk about, and I want to get to some imagining before we leave, but let's just talk about the political situation. We're getting a new mayor. Has there been conversations? He obviously has a different approach than previous mayors. Are you hopeful? Are you going to get to him eventually, presumably? What do you think?
We haven't spoken with him yet, but we are hopeful.
He's picking
that,
a new DOT commissioner, by the way. So
okay. But we do look forward to speaking with him and letting him know, it's not just the Cross Bronx. These are part of the coalition. We teamed up with the folks fighting for the BQE. So there's infrastructure, these battles for changing this infrastructure is not something that's exclusive to the Bronx. So, we are hopeful that we can speak with him to talk to him about how all of these projects impact the health of New York City.
You mean projects in other boroughs?
Correct.
You want to name one just so people
Sure,
can
the
get some-
BQE project and how they're
and
really
they're complaining
advocating.
about similar kind of things?
Yes,
Uh-huh.
yeah. Air pollution, noise pollution, the infrastructure dividing communities. And they, part of the coalition, they came up to the Bronx to do press conferences with us, and we went down to Brooklyn and did
I think that's
did
very,
press
and
conferences
certainly
with
with
them as well.
with a new mayor, any new mayor, that's a good thing, because
Absolutely.
instead of wanting to be nice to one borough, I want to throw this out, and maybe we'll give you the first crack at it. Somebody was talking to me, he was a college student who was doing a study of Kingsbridge and was asking me about Kingsbridge. And I talked about the Kingsbridge Armory, which just had a very huge community development project approved. I thought, and as I was explaining it to him, I said, maybe this is a good model for people to finally realize that people in the Bronx want self-determination. I mean, we don't have to get in. We did a show on the Kingsbridge Armory, but is this the kind of process that could be duplicated in other things at the BQE or anywhere else where communities want to take control? And of course, we're concerned about the Bronx.
Yeah, definitely.
I was waiting to say no.
I learned about local government when I was 35. And I think the more people who know that you can engage in these processes and complain to your electeds, the more control and self-determination the Bronx will have as a whole.
Maybe we should rewind history a little bit and talk about the Bronx River Alliance and the Bronx River and the Bronx River Alliance in that context, because here we had a terrible situation and we kind of working together figured it out, right?
Yeah. I don't pretend. I'm 4.5 years in here. I was a dedicated volunteer for 8 years, and folks before the Alliance in the 1970s were pulling cars and tires and everything out. And so we just have to honor that history and move forward. And again, like pointing to the location where the Five Bridges project was happening, there were folks who were very engaged, and they came together and they had the input. They
Right.
brought the input.
And we're looking here as here's one example. I want to review this about alternatives. There are community alternatives. I thought when I saw this, Daniel sent us this material. I think this is brilliant to put a monorail right down the center of it and get some. I don't know that it'll help with the trucks. So you want to comment on this, and we can leave it up so people can see. Compare the right one to the left one. Which would you prefer?
Well, the left one I believe is actually a dedicated bus lane for a tunnel.
The Lincoln Tunnel.
Lincoln Tunnel.
I recognized it.
And so this is something that Siddhartha, our executive director, found, and the image on the right is a bus lane on a highway in Europe. And so if it works, and we'd have to talk to City DOT, MTA.
Well, that'd be a big.
That would be a big project.
Nilka, which would you do first, or everything simultaneous? In other words, is it going to be one big project? Of course, I just thought of it. If you want to do construction there, normally construction cuts stuff off. You'll have people waiting 9 hours instead of 2 hours to get across the George Washington Bridge. So how do you see that process?
Yeah, it's going to be a long process, and they're not going to be able to do everything at one time, and we're going to have to be patient, right? Knowing that once these changes are made, hopefully there will be less air pollution, less noise pollution, and reconnecting neighborhoods. And one of the things that I envision on these capped spaces is perhaps a linear park, right?
A linear park?
Yeah, replacing those below grade portions along the highway.
How do you? What's the view? What's the vision of that? What is that?
Well, on that map that they showed, right, if all of those can be converted into green spaces, right, then you can have all these.
Are you saying on top of the?
On the capped areas, on the areas that are capped,
and those caps would then be community friendly, even be able to traverse or be green space.
Wouldn't that be great?
Should we take a quick vote?
Yes, we should. We should.
Would that it mean something? So that was another thing which I did want to ask you about, and I know, of course, both of you are parks advocates as well. So, because there was talk about creating park space around this, are those the only places, or are we talking about areas around there also to create parkland? Is there land to do that?
I have not heard that. Currently there are parks along, adjacent to the Cross Bronx. And one of the ideas that came out of this reimagine process is reconnecting Walter Gladwin to Crotona Park, right? Which would be
what is that?
So
Walter Gladwin?
Walter Gladwin Park, which is a playground on Tremont. It's
Okay.
just so Crotona Park was one large park, and then Robert Moses sliced through it. So the northern portion of Crotona Park right now is a park called Walter Gladwin. So part of their report, part of the study is creating a bridge that would connect you from Crotona Park proper to what used to be Crotona Park, which is now Walter Gladwin Park.
And by bridge, you mean like it would look like park space, right?
Hopefully, that's the idea.
That's the whole idea. I just taking a step back from all of this, what does it take to make these kinds of changes? I mean, there's a huge, number of organizations and other people, but that's nice, and we have 1.4 million people who would all vote the same way that we're talking about. But what does it take to move the needle, which has moved? I mean, let's face it, over the Cross Bronx, it's moved. What does it take to move it maybe to the next step?
People power. I think anything that's happened that's good in the Bronx, including the restoration of the Bronx River, creating creating the housing stock after the Decatur fire in the South Bronx. It's all been led by people, and people working together with elected officials You know, the press media is so important in
Here
this,
we
in
are.
getting the message out. So I think a combination of these things, but always being centered by community and being pushed by people.
Daniel, there is a reimagining website, and we're going to put it up there, and I want people to go to it and see it and start to reimagine in their mind. What's your answer to that question about what it takes? I mean, people power is easy to say, but we've got to keep going.
You know, you want to talk about, we have to have monthly meetings. You have to actually pick up the phone or type on the keyboard to your elected and say, I saw this thing on BronxTalk, I care about it. What are you doing about it?
And get people involved.
Yeah.
There it is, by the way. It's crossbronx.info. That's
Yeah.
what the website is. What's the most? Now you had a press conference this morning related
Correct.
to this.
Not
Not
really
quite,
related
okay.
to it, but
it's part
somewhat
of the fight.
it is. Yes, it is important. So this morning we did have a press conference around blue highways. So
What are blue highways?
So blue highways are an alternative mode of transportation when it comes to moving goods. So looking at freight not just being, goods just not being transported, via the Cross Bronx, via the Bruckner, but really accessing blue highways, right? The waterways and freight goods coming in through the waterway and being distributed through freight as opposed to through highways. And this would reduce truck traffic.
I was just going to say, is this a way to get some of those trucks
Absolutely.
over? I have to tell you, if I was a business owner and knew that somebody coming, across the Cross Bronx was going to cost me another 2 hours of somebody sitting and waiting to go all the way across, I would try to find another way of doing it, whether it be freight or rail or whatever. I mean, one day I want to do a video of me sitting in the car waiting to get up onto the George Washington Bridge, and that's what I do. Anyway, Nilka Martell, thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
everything
Thank
you do.
you, Gary.
Daniel, we love the river, right? When is going to be the boating?
May 16th is
All right,
the
everybody circle it on your
flotilla.
calendar.
Yes, it's a big year for us next year, 25 years.
25 years will never stop. Thank you so much for
Thank
what you
you.
do. This is our home, the Borough of the Bronx. That concludes the program for tonight. We want to thank our producer, Stephen Powell. We have a great Bronxnet production and editing crew. And to you too, it's about our home, the Borough of the Bronx. Get that thing out of here. No, that's just me. We'll see you next week. Good night.